lucky accident that I recalled that had already happened. N.K. Sridhar, my mentee and friend, had given me this brilliant book, Strangers to Ourselves by Timothy Wilson, a book about the subconscious. In that, he opens with a very interesting experiment done by a scientist by name Edward Clapperreid. I'm sure the pronunciation is not accurate. Edward Clapperreid is a neuroscientist, and he conducts an experiment on an amnesiac woman. He goes to meet her every day, and obviously the next day she doesn't remember that she met Edward. One day he takes a pin in his hand, and when she shakes his hand, he pricks her hand. And the next day, when he went and met her and again extended his hand, she hesitated because her subconscious had picked up that he had pricked her hand. So that is how powerful the subconscious brain is. Now he goes on to show some interesting statistics about the brain. The conscious brain processes 40 packets of information per second. Now how much do you think the subconscious processes? I fell out of my chair when I saw in his book that it processes 11 million packets of information per second. So you can say our conscious brain is like a snail and the subconscious is like the rocket ship. Whether or not you believe in these numbers, it's quite obvious that the subconscious is exponentially more powerful. Armed with this knowledge of the subconscious, I decided to go back into my fitness record and check. Previous best was 3 months I had done my exercise. 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 hour a day. You can see those green boxes when I had done the exercise. I had done all 12. And the 13th week I went abroad for an international trip and my program stopped. Whereas in the tiny habits method, you saw that even 55 push-ups was taking only less than a minute. So 1 minute a day, that I can say is 1 effort unit compared to the 100 effort units for 1 hour that I assigned. Now interestingly, I would brush my teeth and do few push-ups, right? So that sequence I was maintaining every day and I was doing it daily. Whereas if you look at my previous best, yes, I did all weeks, but some days I had to do it in the evening, and even in the morning I was not doing it in the same sequence. It was not exactly happening like that, and that seems to matter to the subconscious. And let's dig further. I did some back of the envelope calculations. In the 3 days a week program, I calculated that we got about 192,000 learning units. But interestingly, the procrastination part, which is what we do more of, even if we say the thinking effort is just 0.1 effort unit, when it gets multiplied by the 11 million subconscious, you get to 1.1 million. Which is why it is harder for us to beat the procrastination thing. It is much, much stronger. It's a subconscious process. But interestingly, in the case of tiny habits, even though it is only 1 effort unit, it is a subconscious process, and hence it becomes 11 million. It becomes exponentially stronger than the procrastination. This is why I was able to do this better, and I decided to call this tiny grit. Now I was talking to Kumaran about it, and he came up with a great idea that this procrastination thing should be called tiny demon. And you can see here that the tiny demon has learned how to ride the rocket ship, whereas we are still stuck in the conscious zone, 3 days a week and so on. So tiny habits helps us build this tiny grit. I decided to research this further, and at first I thought that marathoners and other people who do regular exercise would have more of tiny grit. I interviewed a lot of marathoners, friend of friends and so on, and it turns out that all of them procrastinate. That's what made me realize that the habit needs to be fine-grained or tiny. It looks like marathoners are building some other neural circuit and not tiny grit. Maybe they are building the grit, which is a bigger thing. So if I started realizing that we seem to have landed on the language of the subconscious, sequence and daily repetition, brushing teeth, do that. So the brain knows that you're going to do something intensive. It starts activating those muscles. It has to be a movement based, fine grained, and we figured out that if we journal, I've talked about journaling, the weight, gratitude journal and so on in this series. That seems to impact the subconscious as well. Having a strong belief also matters. I had the strong belief that this thing will work. Now, many times we struggle with the lack of belief. Intention orientation is something that my co-founder Kumaran came up with, and that seems to be another way to influence the subconscious. Slowly and steadily, we have identified about 9 aspects of the subconscious language, all of which we cover in our Hypoha framework. We have been teaching tiny habits to our mentees for nearly 5 years now. At first, we did not insist on any particular tiny habit. People would build all kinds of habits. And then by another case of a lucky accident, we realized that only heavy duty tiny habits work to build the tiny grit. Otherwise, the tiny grit doesn't seem to get built. So we working with a fitness trainer, we picked these 6 exercises: push-ups, planks, Surya Namaskar, super brain yoga, burpees. And we designed with our fitness trainer a set of exercises called tiny cardio, which we can all pick up because the cardiac muscles seem to respond the fastest to muscle building. So we get our mentees to do any of these 6 exercises to build tiny grit, and many mentees report that this tiny grit seems to be building for them as well.